and a warm welcome to Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse. In an era where cyber threat landscape is not just expanding but evolving with increasing velocity, enterprises and managed service providers are under extreme pressure to do more with less. From ransomware to sophisticated supply chain attacks, the ability to detect, respond, and recover has become a defining factor in enterprise resilience. Considering all these aspects, there has been a notable shift towards automation led security operations powered by AI driven insights and orchestration platforms. Although, with some new set of challenges which pop up every time. To unpack these developments and explore the future of autonomous security operations, we are being joined today by Dan Candee, who's the CEO of Cork Protection. With a strong background of cybersecurity strategy and risk insights, Dan brings deep perspectives into how automation can bring efficiency and ensure security without sacrificing accountability. Hi, Dan. Welcome today to Digital Dialogues.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today.
So, Dan, without further ado, I would directly go to my first question that with increasing use of artificial intelligence and automation in cybersecurity operations and functions, how can enterprises ensure explainability and auditability of machine led actions in case of a future incident or a legal scrutiny?
Yeah, great question. And if I were to simplify that, when I think about the increase of use of automation and AI by both threat actors and cybersecurity companies who are trying to stop those threat actors, it is shocking how much volume and value exists today. I say shocking because we are thinking about it all the time. And we're thinking about it not because it's a buzzy thing in the news, not because an investor tells us we should, not because journalists necessarily ask us to, but because these are tools. And the whole point of building solutions for our managed service providers or for our clients is to have the right tool at the right time that is actually light in the hand so that we can use the tool to solve the problem. And if we're not solving a problem, then we should all go do something else, right? If I'm trying to build a house and I need to be putting the walls up, right? And I've got to be attaching, the wall material, the drywall to the stud or, to the concrete block, right? I actually want to be using the hammers and the nails and the epoxies and the right things. I don't want to be using pry bars and rivet hammers and things like that. And so you got to use the right thing. So anyways, with regard to automation and machine learning, right? And in many ways, a lot of these AI tools or automation tools are machine learning that have been given parameters to do more quickly. We're leveraging those things with the human touch, the human thought, right, of what we want as an output. I was just going to say that specifically at Cork, our entire purpose is that we've created a super connector for risk insights and financial protection. When I say risk insights, what we're doing is we're working with all of the best cybersecurity solutions that exist for managed service providers and SMB, all right? And what we're trying to do is we integrate with them through APIs in an agentless fashion, and we're consuming all of those risk insights. And we're doing that in a very fast, light way. For instance, in the last 6 months, we have consumed 2.3 million compliance events. And then we automate those so that we can instantly give back those insights to our partners and empower our partners to take action on behalf of SMB and they have, and so they have taken 1.9 million actions to date, meaning they have helped close the windows and the doors against the threat actors. And they do that by leveraging our machine learning, our automation tools, and the insights coming out of our platform.
So Dan, as you mentioned about the automated remediation systems, there's one thing which at times bothers enterprise and the cybersecurity leaders, that their dependence on these decisions is via machines. So is there a risk of automation blindness where the team loses touch with deeper threat patterns? And if yes, how should cyber leaders address it?
I love the question, and the answer is yes. And the phrase that we use in our business is trust but verify, right? Automation is a tool that requires supervision. Automation blindness is a significant concern that can erode the critical thinking and expertise of security teams. And so cybersecurity leaders have to proactively mitigate the risk. And so there's a couple different things that we do. Strategic human teaming, meaning us as humans coming together to plan and think about all of the different scenarios that are most important to us as a business, to our partners, and to our clients. And then what are the plans that roll up within that strategic plan? How are we going to go execute them? What are the technologies that roll up? And what are the supporting remediation plans? For instance, when we as humans first learned to fly, there were the wing, right? And the basics, and there were a lot of accidents. And eventually, 50, 60 years later, development of the Boeing 747 that made that plane so amazing and transformed global flight for everybody is the fact that there wasn't a secondary system, there wasn't a tertiary system, but the 747 has 4 different backups, right? And so if flight control fails 1, 2, 3, there's still the 4. There's 4 engines. There's 4 hydraulic systems. And so we as cybersecurity leaders think of it the same way. So we've got our strategic teaming, we've got structured human oversight and review. We're encouraging threat intelligence and pattern recognition. So we're actually using the tools against the tools to see how can the tools break down. Does that make sense? Right? And we're doing that hacker mindset training to see how we can break ourselves. And then that 4th layer, we're doing metrics beyond efficiency, meaning how can we look at ourselves as humans and the machines and the tools, and then plan ahead to understand what are the leading indicators and the lagging indicators, so that if anything is coming out of balance, we're able to look at those signals, the yellow flags or the yellow warnings and the red warnings, and to immediately address those things before anything actually gets too severe.
Definitely, this multi-layered strategy is the need of the hour, considering the dependence on the machines and the much needed collaboration of human mind and the artificial intelligence. And
And
Dan,
it's
yeah.
far more interesting as well, right? We live in a world where the biggest joy comes from our interaction with one another. I've had the privilege of building smaller company, mid-sized companies, and then also running a global business at Amazon Web Services with hundreds of employees worth billions of dollars. And the one common thing across all of those businesses is that my framework for success has been an output of love plus performance, not just performance. That love piece is the interaction between humans, the integrity between humans, and the way that we trust and interact with one another, right? And it's that relationship and the intellectual relationship we create, which allows us to apply logic to the performance side of our business and our technologies.
True, absolutely. And as we have talked about the automated systems, the next thing which I would like to delve is that how should enterprises future-proof the security posture against post-quantum threats, and especially with many legacy systems. I'm sure it won't be easy to upgrade because there's still in some enterprises which are really much more dependent on the legacy systems as compared to upgrading them to maybe a quantum space cryptography kind of a system.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm sure that there are experts out there with much deeper technical expertise than myself who have an opinion on it. In my humble experiences, I often look at what enterprise leaders are doing in order to future-proof their own business, right? And so, again, I mentioned the AWS piece where I was able to see what I call it Wall Street, right? What the largest 500 or 1,000 global businesses are doing and how they're anticipating some of these things. And if you take the top 10 or top 20 best practices that they're doing in those scenarios, and you're able to distill it down to a handful of those really top five, and actually begin to apply it to mid-market or SMB, which is where I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about some of these activities. At the end of the day, managed service providers, MSPs and MSSPs, right, are really trying to consume those best practices from enterprise and apply them in a cost-efficient way. So in a simplified fashion, it's how can we learn from the best? How can we consume a couple of technologies that are driving best of breed behavior in a SaaS mentality, anticipating the future, and then applying it in frameworks to SMB models.
Okay, great. And when we are talking of all these technologies, there's another thing, Dan, that uh, the overall types of attacks have definitely risen as the new technologies are getting introduced to the overall infrastructure of enterprises. There is rise in ransomware attacks, your supply chain, your third-party softwares, and many more. So, for enterprises, what should be the ideal go-to framework that they should adopt to monitor, validate, and govern the overall security automation practices, specifically when they are working with external vendors and partners?
Again, another great question. The interesting part about it is that despite all of the frameworks and the technologies and the rise of all of these things, the one commonality is that human error continues to be the primary place where we see an increase in successful cyber attacks. Across the 2.3 million compliance events that Cork witnessed in the last 6 months, 88% of the successful ones came from human error. And those examples are business email compromise, right? Is the most common. And really that means ACH or wire transfer fraud is one of the most frequent, and it's the easiest, in part because threat actors are doing the volume attack. Yes, at enterprise, but especially at the smaller and medium-sized businesses. And that's really, as I mentioned before, where I'm very focused on my attention. I care about Main Street or, all of the businesses that are less than 1,000 employees. And what's happening, I'll give you an example. It's a construction company here in the United States. This construction company is working with a managed service provider that is doing an incredible job using the right cybersecurity frameworks to have endpoint protection, security awareness training, using MFA, right? On and on. It's about 10, 11 different cybersecurity and technology related services, most of them SaaS, some on-prem, to protect this multi-million dollar construction company. And what happened is that it was a supply chain attack where the threat actors were able to get into the architecture firm that services this construction company because that was the weaker link, not protected by the MSP and not using some of these best practices that we have been talking about. And they got into the email server, realized that the construction company was one of their clients, and said, hey, you've got this invoice for $22,000. Please pay it. By the way, here's your new ACH or your new wire number. And they knew the three people that they needed to contact at the construction company. And so they did everything by the book and they sent the information over, and the construction company received it, and it got through all of the security protocols that had been set up. And so they paid the invoice. What the construction company didn't do was pick up the phone and verify, hey, you have changed your banking information. Is this correct? Right? That was the human error that I'm referring to, the 88%, right? And so Cork, one of the things that we do is we provide the financial protection. We sell, one of our services is a cyber warranty. And so we were able to reimburse the construction company for the $22,000 and be there when nobody else was going to be there. The bank wasn't able to do it, etc. But the point is, the threat actors are able to identify these gaps in all of the security components that we are building as technology companies in these supply chain. And so it is our duty as various technology leaders and business leaders to work with our clients, not just on the best protocols, but also in this is the latest and greatest that the threat actors are putting out into the world. And these are the things that you have to be aware of in training all of the employees in companies worldwide to understand what's happening.
And with this example, the thing that comes to my mind, Dan, is that your peripheral or the cybersecurity strategy is only as strong as the weakest link. And this is where it hits the most, because these are the most low-hanging fruits for the cyber adversaries.
You are absolutely correct. When we counsel our MSPs, our partners, and our clients, the approach is relatively simple, which is we need you to be the top 75 performing businesses in the world, which is a relatively easy bar to be above when it comes to cybersecurity posture. It's the lower performing 25% that don't have multi-factor, that don't have endpoint protection, that aren't doing security awareness training. 2 or 3 simple things, right? That do cost some money, that do take some time. But it's that lower 20, 25% that aren't investing in cybersecurity yet, that are really getting hit hard. And we want to help everybody, educate. The point is, if you're in the top 75%, you're secure enough most of the time that it's not worth the threat actor's effort to come after you. And they're going to go for easier targets. And it's just the world where we're living in, where there's so many open doors for bad guys and bad girls to get into, that they're just walking around to each house looking for which door is actually unlocked. And those that are unlocked today, they're entering. So don't be an open door.
Great, and this is a great message. And as enterprises and SMBs specifically, as they are looking forward to scale their cybersecurity capabilities while maintaining precision and compliance, the role of this explainable automation, a resilient infrastructure, and transparent vendor ecosystem cannot be overstated. And as Dan, you aptly highlighted that this immense potential of real time risk remediation is the need of the hour for all these platforms. So thank you, Dan, for sharing all your perspectives and to be with here today at Digital Dialogues.
Pratik, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Anything we can do together to make this world a slightly safer, more interesting place together is worth our time. So I hope you have a wonderful day.
Great, and thank you to our lovely audience to hearing to this conversation with Dan. Thank you for being with us. Do watch out the space for more such insightful conversations around emerging technologies, cybersecurities, and much more that technology is throwing to us. So keep watching the space. Until then, take care and goodbye.